from my activity in studying Black history, like J.A. Rogers, Joel A. Rogers, I mentioned earlier. Well, he was internationally known and world recognized and renowned. You know, right today we celebrate Black History Month in February. But back in the day, he was a contemporary of Carter G. Woodson, who started Black History Week back in the actually in the mid-40s. He started that, okay? But his contemporary, J.A. Rogers. And J.A. Rogers, Carter Woodson was the second African-American to get a PhD from an American university. And J.A. Rogers had his educated mostly at the major colleges over in Europe, like the Sorbonne in France, and said major college in Belgium and Luxembourg and all the major universities through the world. That's where he taught, and he studied there. So he had this background. So he's brought to Youngstown. I think that must have been about 1954, 55, thereabouts. He come to Youngstown, one of the Black fraternities brought him in to speak. And I was interested in Black history. Negro history was called at that time. So I went over and had a chance to meet him. So I gave him a little background on myself, told him I had never met George Washington Carver, but he was a contemporary of my grandparents, and I befriended him, okay? And he knew I knew a little bit about it, so he invited me if I ever come to New York, I could visit him. He had an office on Fifth Avenue. So when Bill White played in the first World Series for the Cardinals, I think it was like 1963 or 1964, had a chance to take my family, my daughter, and my son, my wife. We went to New York. And so my wife and I, we went to his apartment, and he had it's like a library, and in all different languages, but I was just impressed, and he was impressed with me being young as I was, and I'd been the first Black African. Matter of fact, I was a firefighter at the time, and the first Black fireman, and you didn't have that many Black firemen even in New York at the time, so that was something special. And so we became very, very good friends. He was getting older. At the time, he was living by himself, but he had a Caucasian lady with him, and he said, it's his wife. And I smiled, I guess I rolled my eyes. He said, no, she's never consummated. He said, she's a granddaughter of a good friend of mine, okay, who was a professor in one of the big major colleges in Europe. And she came there to get married so she could get her citizenship. And she acted as his associate, secretary and so forth. Her name was Helga. I think Helga might be still living in Jackson. Last I heard from her, she was in Tallahassee, Florida, the capital of Florida. But those books I read, and there's at least 13 major books that he wrote, several manuscripts and authors, and writings. You can look him up, Google him or whatever, you find out what type of person he was. But he did a lot to shed light on the accomplishments of Black Americans. Not only Black Americans, but in antiquity. He went way back before history, if I could say that. But he's accomplished. And I grew up and studying that. And I remember, I didn't realize who Hannibal was, because when I was in 10th grade in high school, we studied, I love world history. And a lot of the Blacks in history, we didn't know they were Black because we didn't realize North Africa was in Carthage as present-day Libya, where Gaddafi is from. That's in North Africa. And the great warrior, Hannibal, he crossed the Alps and over in Italy and so forth, and several major saints in the Catholic Church are named after them. And right now, he was a tactician, a general, and he conquered much of so-called known Europe at the time. And everywhere they went, to the victor belonged the spoils. So them Black men on them elephants and everywhere they left in them northern European countries, they left their mark. And that's why you got villages in certain areas in Europe now still look like me, okay, of a darker hue. They came from what those Black Africans went through there. Matter of fact, it claimed northern Italy, as much of their lineage came from us. And so It used to be at one time there was a lot of discrimination among Italians, if you call them black because that's where they were. But the enlightened ones benefited from them, okay, because they used that to assert their strength and masculinity.